Oh, Ryan Talbot. I am just dropping the ball. I had the wrong brand up. I had the wrong border up. We had the show the other night out at Resurgence, and I wanted to start there because I saw some comments on the YouTube channel. Our audio producer ended up taking the audio and making it at least a more audio audio pleasant experience. We were in the bar. We were trying a setup. It did not work at all. But once we get there, it's kind of like we can either have this kind of crappy audio or we could just turn it off. And we just felt like we were out there. We wanted to do it. And so we apologize for, the audio just wasn't great on Friday night. And it was great in person. A lot of people came out. They had a great time. This is the Shout Buffalo Football Podcast coming to you. I am Matt Parrino from St. John Fisher University in Pittsford, New York. We are back in the dorms. As you can see my awesome little dorm room behind me. Got a couple dressers, got a couple cots over here. Ryan will be here this weekend. We're going to jam in here and do a show. We're rocking out here. He is Ryan Talbot. We are brought to you by Value Home Centers. Boom. I had the old border up too. It's just, it's day one of camp. Listen, there were passes that were dropped. There were throws that were missed. And on the Shout Buffalo Football Podcast, sometimes there's a couple gaffes. It's no big deal. But we're brought to you by Value Home Centers. And man, they'll take care of you guys. Customers can shop anytime at valuehomecenters.com. And what that means is you could shop their huge selection online, get it shipped right to your house. If there's a product maybe that you were looking for at your local store, they didn't have it, you can find it online, valuehomecenters.com. They will ship it to your local store to pick up, or they'll ship it right to you. So check out their huge selection. They have a huge selection over at the warehouse. Ryan Talbot, what's up, buddy?
Hey, not too much. Happy to be talking training camp with you. Bills fans, we're going to be talking about Matt's observations, but if you haven't read them yet, they are up on the site, nyf.com and syracuse.com.
So before we start, you were up in town at Resurgence on Friday. We did a big training camp preview. And if you do want to check that full thing out, I would highly recommend going on the audio side, Spotify and Apple. Our guy Colin did a really nice job with that. And it sounds a lot better on there. It was a deep dive with Jeremy White, John Scott, Del Reed, Josh Reed from Channel 4. And we went into a lot of questions. We're going to react to some of the first observations that we saw out on the practice field today. But you've kind of been following along from home. What was your big first takeaway from day one, St. John Fisher? The Bills are back here.
Yeah, play the rookies, I think, man. I think a lot of rookies stepped up in a positive way today, so I think that might be a good starting point for us.
For sure. Let's go to James Cook first, because I don't know if there's a player that I've been asked about more since April than James Cook. And in a lot of ways, I've gotten to thinking over the last couple of weeks, man, Bills fans are kind of putting expectations really high for this kid in year one. We've seen what has happened in the past for running backs that come in here. It's usually kind of a slow start, walk before you can run under in the Sean McDermott regime. And I think the excitement level with Cook is that he does things a little bit differently. And you saw it today on the practice field. Now, important note, no pads are on yet. So all the observations are from, flag football, basically, right? So, of course, the guys that are speedy, that look good with the ball in their hands, they're going to stand out on a day like today. But the fact that James Cook did stand out today, I think it's newsworthy. I think it's somewhere to, worth starting. And he looks comfortable. A big reason why the Bills really covet that spring period is to get their younger players up to speed with the playbook, with, just making them feel comfortable in the offense around the other guys. James Cook looked really good at rookie minicamp, but it's a whole different thing to kind of stand out on a day where the offense is struggling amongst all of the other veterans. I mean, that was the first team starting defense for the Bills out there. And there was a few reps. I can't get into where he played and when he played. But he was sprinkled all over the place. And I think that making those kinds of plays, those flash plays, are good. I'll go to one in particular that stood out. He had a rushing touchdown. That was really nice. You saw the burst. get through the line. But again, they're not tackling, so it's hard to kind of judge that. There was a pass from Case Keenum, and we could get into his day a little bit as well later on. And I thought, listen, it was a boom, boom play. He got to the second level. He made a nice move. Case Keenum found him, threw a dart over the middle, makes a nice catch. But you got to make that catch. And we're going to get to somebody later in the show that, didn't make a couple catches today. And so I think that's a good place to start. James Cook, really, really looking comfortable. I'm excited to what it's going to look like. The Bills put on pads July 30th. That is this Saturday. Ryan Talbot, you're going to be here for the first padded practice.
Going to be there for the first padded practice. It'll be there the 29th as well. 29th and 30th. Really looking forward to it. But yeah, James Cook. Usually you mentioned it. The Bills bring their rookies along slowly unless there's an absolute pressing need to get them onto the field. And in the case of a Trey White, Tremaine Edmonds, you get the gist. There's not a pressing need to get him on the field with Devin Singletary there. You can start him out as that pass catching back on third downs. But as the season goes on, I would like to see him get some reps running the ball, more reps running the ball, more opportunities to catch the ball in the backfield. He's coming from a Georgia program where he still has a lot of tread on the tires, so to speak. He was not an every down back there. He was part of a rotation. I think that's going to benefit him. He has that burst that this team is kind of missing from the running back position. So I think that the ceiling is extremely high on James Cook. And to show up day one, mind you, as you mentioned, a non-padded practice, and to kind of stand out on the field, that's a great start and a great place for Cook to be in terms of in front of all the fans, in front of all those teammates saying, listen, I can make plays when given the ball.
So Terrel Bernard is the other rookie that I want to highlight here. And this is somebody that, again, every time we do one of these post-practice shows, Terrel Bernard is a name that kind of pops up in the comment section, in our DMs. And today you really saw the speed. And I think a cool thing that when you see something like this happen, Bernard got the 6 weeks to kind of go back to the drawing board, take what he's learned, which is probably a lot considering the guy is super smart, somebody that they kind of talked about when they drafted him for his ability to get into a playbook, play fast on the field because of how smart he plays. You saw that out there today, a couple plays that he made. The first was in 7-on-7. And listen, that really puts the defense in the bind. A lot of times you're one-on-one with a skill position player that's probably faster than you. They know what you're doing. They're doing. You don't really know what they're doing. And he made a play on Dawson Knox where Knox got some separation immediately off the snap. And then shortly after that, Bernard just closed the distance super fast, made it a contested catch situation. Again, 7-on-7, one-on-one drill, no pads. But to recover like that, that's what you're kind of looking for in this kind of setting. Confidence building plays. And so Bernard gets in there, he breaks it up. It was hard. I was standing at the other end of the field. It could have been a drop on Knox. It could have been a pass breakup. I thought Bernard did a really good job on the play to close the distance and make it a situation. Then later in practice, I believe it was Case Keenum who threw one, and Bernard was just it was kind of behind James Cook a little bit, so he had to make an adjustment. But even if that was a really well-placed ball, Bernard had such good positioning on the play that he's probably going to break that up. And you start to envision what it could look like. I think a lot of people are like, all right, how does Bernard get on the field? And when they drafted him, size comparison-wise, he does have some comparable size measurements to Taron Johnson. I mean, he's a little bit bigger. He's a little bit bulkier. But I think in a lot of ways, Ryan, we're seeing, and this isn't even any inside information from what happened out there today in terms of where they lined him up. But a lot of times you see Taron Johnson out there. If you didn't see his number, you'd probably think that he was just playing linebacker, right? And I think in a lot of ways with the speed that Bernard brings to the table, they can kind of splash him out there in similar ways, maybe kind of go with a rotation approach and involve the linebacker more. And, Bernard maybe has some of that positionless flexibility that I think that this defensive coaching staff covets.
Yeah, when he was drafted, I compared him to Matt Milano, the safety converted to a linebacker type of player, similar size, faster in terms of speed, but a lot of the same attributes. And I like the Taron Johnson comparison too. I think you can line him up in a lot of different ways, and he's going to, when given the opportunity, be able to make plays for this defense. Again, just like Cook, having a rookie, a day 2 pick, get out there and make some splash plays on day 1, that's encouraging. They liked him for the skill set. They liked the fact that he can close on plays, that he has the sideline the speed to go sideline. He's not an inside linebacker or anything like that, but he has the ability to move all over the field in an impressive manner. And in today's NFL, you need players like that. Players that can line up with your running backs, players that can line up with tight ends who are more athletic than ever. So to have a guy like Terrel Bernard out there in terms of maybe being the third linebacker in some sets, maybe just getting onto the field in other ways, I really think that, again, just like Cook, this is a good start. Matt, I do see some comments in here about a few other rookies that I'll throw your way. They want to know about Elam, and they'd like to know about Matt Ariza.
Yeah, not a lot for Ariza again. I'm wondering if we'll get to see him hold finally tomorrow. Today it was all Matt Hawk, and he had a couple booming punts. I mean, he's out there. The conditions were nice. He was sprinkling a little bit at times, but he sent a couple. I saw one video that was kind of going around on Twitter. You could probably find that, if you will. We're not really allowed to report too much from the special teams portion, but I thought he looked good. I thought he looked comfortable, even on the sidelines, watching as Matt Hawk was holding for Tyler Bass on a few field goals. I mean, you just get the vibe off the guy that he's a confident kid. Not a lot to report on him yet, in my eyes. I will give a shout out. I would imagine Joe Buscalia's notebook is a little bit thicker on the page that goes for punters, so you're going to want to check that out over at the Athletic later today, if it's not already out already. He really dives into the punters. I will talk about Elam because there was a couple of plays. Man, he was splashed all over the place today. He had a couple matchups. Sean McDermott mentioned it. With Tre'Davious White out, it's going to be Elam and Dane Jackson that are going to be out there with the first team. And we can't really get too much into the weeds reporting with who's playing where. But occasionally, when the coach goes into it a little bit, we could talk a little bit more about it. And that's you figure that, right? I mean, that's the two guys next on the depth chart. And I thought today they both had their struggles. I mean, Gabriel Davis, man, he is just a load. I mean, he's been a load to deal with the last 3 years, two seasons. This now his being his third season. Now you could just see the physicality that he plays with, the comfort that he plays with. Every time that these guys get lined up with him, it is tough. And Dane Jackson was on him a couple times. Elam was on him a couple times. And then the same thing went for Stephon Diggs. In one rep in particular, Kaiir Elam got absolutely dusted by Diggs, which, listen, in a one-on-one situation, man on man, I know that his strength was press coverage. You're going to struggle in that situation against Stephon Diggs. The best of the best in this league talk about, not wanting to be on an island with him. We've seen what's happened to J.C. Jackson, Stephon Gilmore in recent years when that's happened, and the paychecks that those dudes have cashed have been the stuff that Kaiir Elam is dreaming about right now. So it's a situation where you're going to be in those circumstances. You got to learn from it. The only problem was the way that this offense was kind of struggling in the red zone work that they did today. Elam got beat. Stephon Diggs made a perfect move to the inside, was wide open. Josh Allen just read the play wrong, thought Diggs was going to break it to the outside, threw it there, incomplete pass. So, they're still kind of getting their wires aligned. They got him crossed a few times today, and Josh Allen spoke about it. He said, at this point in camp, you want to go red zone early so that you can kind of go back to the drawing board, get all the people in a room and figure out, okay, we need to do this better, and this better. And as you progress through camp, you start seeing checkpoints, right? And okay, we check this off the list. We check this off the list. He's like, at any point in camp, if something's perfect, he basically alluded to the fact that you're not going to really see that too often because there's so many things that you're kind of testing out for the first time. That's what practice is for. And that's what this was, practice.
Yeah, there's going to be mistakes on both sides. And when it comes to Kaiir Elam, listen, the old saying, iron sharpens iron. This is going to be good for him to go against Gabriel Davis, who, he came into his own, obviously, in that playoff game against the Chiefs with 4 touchdowns, but he's put in a lot of work this offseason to work on his frame, being even bigger, around 227 pounds at that. So, that's going to be a tough matchup out of the gate for him. You have Stephon Diggs, one of the best receivers in the game right now. So at least he's going to be ready come preseason, regular season. He's going to know what it's like to go against some of the best, and that's only going to benefit him, whether it's early in the season when it's possibly him and Dane Jackson out there, or whenever Tre'Davious White is ready and it's either Elam or Jackson opposite him. We know that these reps now, getting beaten, you never want to see it happen if you're that player, but this is going to benefit him long term.
Indeed. We got a shout out, Patty.
Yeah,
Patty A 2012 on YouTube. Shout out to the Bills Mafia. Love the Shout podcast. Bill supporter from Belfast in Northern Ireland. Where are we all from? Folks are shouting themselves out here in the comments. Welcome, Patty. We like you. All the Bills Mafia, wherever we can get them from all over this great globe that we have. A lot of international stuff in Bills Mafia the last couple of weeks. Sal Capaccio was in Italy hanging out with the Bills backers of Italy down there, and some great stories he told me here, getting together with everybody in Pittsburgh. It was cool too. I went and got a coffee before we started driving around, and we did the show last week or earlier this week with Jenna Cottrell, and looking at some of the spots that I'm kind of mapping out over the next couple of weeks where I want to hit. We'll have to actually discuss where we're going. Kobe on YouTube, thank you so much. He read my mind exactly where we're going next. Big man interception. Gotta love it. I love talking about these. Before we get there, though, this is the Shout Buffalo Football Podcast. We're cruising up to 250. You know it's training camp season when those numbers start booming. Hit that like button. Subscribe to the show as well. We really appreciate all your support. Find us on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher. Search Shout a Buffalo Football Podcast. You'll find us there. Rate and review. Do all those awesome things. Tim Settle is settling in nicely on the Bills defensive line. Got a little action today. It was Case Keenum who honestly really got his day on track after what I thought, man, one of my observations of Case Keenum here, now watching him in about a dozen practices, not even a dozen, probably like half a dozen. He starts slow in practice, Ryan. Early on in practice, he throws some ducks. It's almost like the arm strength has to kind of get going. Now he's getting a little bit older, so maybe it's just about being a slow starter. But one of them came to Tim Settle today where the pressure was just absolutely in his face. He was running out of options really quickly. He had to figure out something to do. He kind of tried to like dump it off, I think, and he threw it directly at Tim Settle. And hey, man, sometimes as a defensive lineman, you get a ball thrown on you that quickly. They were really close quarters. It wouldn't be surprising if he wasn't able to make a play on that ball, but he clenched his arms, brought it in, hauled it in, started running up the right side of the sideline. He was celebrating. I wouldn't be surprised if the Bills put it out on social media. I've not seen if they have yet, but it was one of those fun camp moments. And, a lot of activity. I didn't write about it in my observations. I probably should have. Maybe I'll go back and add it. One rep in particular that Von Miller absolutely just wrecked David Quessenberry. I mean, this was kid at the candy store, and he just set him up for a spin move. And it was like one of those where Quessenberry was just kind of like out on his front, on the tips of his toes, and you were almost wondering if he was going to face plant. He missed it so badly. Von Miller was in the back, and I think Keenum was. No, I think it was Josh Allen. He got rid of the ball, or it might have been it was close. It could have been a sack, but they don't really blow the whistles. There's no refs here yet. It was a really, really good play. And I thought that, the Bills defensive line all day, my point being, is that they were really doing a good job of putting pressure on all three quarterbacks. This play in particular, David Quessenberry in at right tackle. Spencer Brown returned to practice today. He was behind him on the second team. We could talk about that. And, there was a little bit of loosened guidelines, restrictions after practice today, just because it is an open practice. And so you'll kind of see that if you're out there. I know that was kind of percolating elsewhere today. Cody Ford in at right or left guard for Roger Saffold. So, we'll kind of monitor Spencer Brown over the next couple of weeks. This is his first practice after missing all of the spring. And so you figure it's going to be kind of a walk before you run. And you know how Sean McDermott loves to make guys earn it. Even second-year guys, third-year guys, it might be a little while before he, gets that, that starting gig back. But we'll see. Quessenberry started 17 games last year, Ryan.
Yeah. So first and foremost, with the defensive tackles, Tim Settle. I've said it for a while now. I'm a big fan of Tim Settle and his game. I like what he brought for the Washington Commanders over the course of his career there. Made a name for himself despite that entire defensive line being nothing but first rounders. He always seemed to be making a splash play here and there. I think that in this rotation that the Bills will roll out at some point this year, he'll have his fair share of snaps, and you have so many other talented defensive tackles now in this lineup. You already mentioned some of them, but I really like the fact that you're already starting to see some big plays. And mind you, it was a really bad throw by Case Keenum, as you mentioned. In terms of the offensive linemen, Spencer Brown, you nailed it perfectly, Matt. Sean McDermott doesn't want to hand anything to players, even if they were in that starting role last year. You weren't here for the spring. We're going to start you out at a certain, with a certain team. You got to work your way back up to that role, to that spot. Show us that you've earned that role, that you deserve to be the starter. I'm not surprised by that whatsoever. Questenberry, though, he has the experience. Cody Ford, this is the opportunity, Matt, that you've been talking about now for a good month now, saying, hey, all you need is that opportunity, and maybe you can kind of prove yourself. Does Ford have an opportunity to get a starting job out of the gate? I don't think so. And obviously right now it's because of a car accident that's keeping Roger Saffold off the field. He was in a car accident a few weeks ago, and he injured his ribs. They said that not experiencing much pain now, just can't sleep with that. And that's obviously not ideal for someone you want to have out there on the field starting. So once he's back up to speed, once the trainers say he has the go-ahead, you're going to have him in the starting lineup. But this is a great opportunity for Cody Ford.
Yeah. I'm really interested to see what it looks like in the game situation, right? Like, of course, and obviously the padded practices as well. Even Brandon Bean made a good note today that it's really hard to evaluate these guys until the pads come out in the trenches, because you're kind of pulling up. And I talk about the Von Miller rep. I mean, there's not really a lot that David Questenberry is going to do there in terms of no pads, not being able to kind of use your leverage and your physicality, especially on a guy that they just gave $120 million to. That's probably not your first training camp practice if you're David Questenberry wanting to go out there and be part of any type of injury situation for him. So that's kind of funny. Let's get to Khalil Shakir a little bit, because I thought he was really, really active today. Jessica asked before we get onto that, did Ford look lighter and in better shape? I don't necessarily think that he looked lighter, but I do think the fact that he's playing injury free is going to allow him to be a little bit, move a little bit better. The real updates in the trenches, though, like I mentioned, Jessica, is going to come this next weekend when we finally get to see them, what they look like with pads on. Shakir was awesome today. This was the first day where he was just splashing around practice, doing a lot of, work in that short to intermediate range of the field. And he's really explosive, Ryan. That's one of the big takeaways from today, is that he gets in and out of his cuts really quickly. He's still wearing a bit of a tape situation going on the one leg. Remember back in, I think it was rookie mini camp, he might have missed a practice or two. He still has a pretty heavy tape job there. RJ asked about surprises. We'll get there next. But I thought Shakir looked really good today. And I really don't think there's going to be, I'd like to talk to him about this, but I'm really curious to see if he won't end up fitting into more of a versatile role. Like, I know a lot of people talk about him in the slot, and I can't really get too much into where specifically he played today. I know it might be out there in some places, but I do think that he might be able to contribute elsewhere. He's got that kind of explosiveness in his route running. I'm very interested to see how they use him and deploy him once the game starts.
Yeah, and listen, Khalil Shakir was that player that draft analysts said if the Bills would have taken him late on day 2, they would have loved the pick. There were others, a lot of draft experts were praising that pick. There was a Brandon Bean saying that he got some angry texts after taking Khalil Shakir when he did in the 5th round. So the value is there. Clearly, a lot of the same executives on teams thought that the potential was there for Shakir to be an impact player in this league. And for the Bills, the good news is you don't have to rush him onto the field by any, stretch of the imagination when you have Jamison Crowder and you have Isaiah McKenzie, who are those slot type of players. But if Khalil Shakir forces his way onto the field and he looks the part, he shows that he can have some position versatility, then that's even better for this Bills roster, that you can line him up in different ways, get him onto the field. So just like we talked about with James Cook, Terrel Bernard, some of these rookies are making a great first impression.
Speaking of making a great first impression, man, when you walk into a Value Home Centers and you sign up for Best Rewards, I think you could do it even on their website. Man, you get deals right off the jump. They give you a coupon to start, and it's one of the best loyalty programs around. Customers earn points for purchases every day that will bring them more savings. Veterans and active military earn double points on every purchase every day. Where do you want to go next, Ryan Talbot?
Let's talk about someone you alluded to a little bit earlier when you mentioned some drops, Matt. Let's get some of the bad news out of the way here.
So Kobe asked about Jordan Poyer. We'll get into him too before we get out of here. But let's get to, listen, man. Dawson Knox is one of my, if I was giving out a media award, like for best interview, like just best overall guy, Knox would be in the running. Like him and Micah Hyde, Poyer, they're all up on that list. So, it's tough dogging on him, but, and it's an unpadded practice, but something that happened a couple of years ago with him when he was going through that, those drops, in his rookie and second season, more so in the rookie year, it kind of fixed things. He was working with the tennis balls or the ping pong balls, and he did a lot of different things. Anytime he has a practice with multiple drops, it's almost like your antennas go up a little bit. And today, the first one was the Bernard situation where I thought I was at a distance. I couldn't really tell if it was a drop or a pass breakup, but later in practice, Josh Allen had him or it might've been actually Keenum, had him on a short route. And he delivered it in pretty good. I mean, there wasn't anybody around him, and Dawson Knox just dropped the ball. And if that's something that pops up, they went out and they signed OJ Howard. But after that, there is not a lot of proven depth at the tight end position. Quentin Morris had a really spectacular catch today, maybe the catch of the day, back of the end zone, kind of like a sliding catch, was able to get his body down, get himself in bounds, really made a nice splash on day one. I mean, that's the depth conversation. One of those three guys, Jalen Weidemeyer, Tommy Sweeney, or Quentin Morris, one of those guys has to impress enough to win a spot. And today, I think it was Quentin Morris who made the biggest splash play of the day. But between Howard and Knox, I mean, that's really who you're going to lean on at the tight end position. And it's interesting, like if Knox runs into a situation potentially this year where drops become a problem again, can OJ Howard handle a tight end one role in this offense, knowing where he's been injury wise, where he's at with this offense? I'm not projecting that, but just, thinking about potential possibilities. When you've had drop issues at one point in your career, I think that, the fan base, especially, you're always kind of worried about that kind of problem popping up again.
Yeah, absolutely. But to Knox's credit, there were practices last summer where we talked about drops, and he went on to have the best season of his career, almost 600 yards receiving, 9 touchdowns. He had a nice playoff run as well. I thought that he had obviously his best season up to this date. So I'm not worried too much about it yet. But to your point, it's the depth behind him. If he does have issues with drops with confidence, who is going to step up in that role? What can you expect from OJ Howard, who, we mentioned had looked a little bit slow earlier this spring when he was out there on the field? It might have been getting used to the playbook. Might just be kind of, getting used to this offense just in general, where he's lining up, what he's doing. But you want this offense to have weapons across the board. And I think Dawson Knox is a weapon at the end of the day at tight end, and he'll be fine. But when you have 2 drops in the first practice, it needs to be mentioned. Now, Matt, you were asked a little bit about some surprises today, and obviously Quentin Morris, I think, was one of them. Do you have another one in mind?
Yes. And I do. First of all, I want to shout out this funny comment from Joshua Allen over on Facebook. I think Knox will be fine. He probably is just a little rusty. He'll ratchet it up during camp.
Boom.
That's one of my favorite sayings. So thank you for that, Joshua. Yeah. So the other guy, looking through my notebook, I saw his name written down 4 or 5 times, and it was nothing spectacular or anything like that, a play that I really need to write about. But I thought, Zack Moss looked really crisp today, really fast. I thought he looked, like he was moving around really well. I think he had 1 catch in the passing game, had a rushing touchdown in the red zone. He was just moving well. And, just thinking back on the entire practice, if I was ranking them between the 3 running backs in terms of who stood out, Cook had himself a nice day. I might even put Moss above Cook in that I just felt like he was really performing well today. And it was, again, no pads. And the dynamic of Moss's game is like, you almost at times wonder, like, all right, you need the pads for Moss to have a really standout practice. Well, he didn't need it today. So I think that's a good sign that maybe he's in a really good place health-wise. I thought Zack Moss had a really nice practice today.
And that's big for him because this is a bigger year than I think some anticipate, where while the Bills like having those rookies that are under the favorable contracts for a few seasons, I don't think he's a roster lock by any stretch of the imagination. When you have Singletary, you have Cook, you brought in Duke Johnson to compete. Despite him being more so of a pass catcher throughout his career, he ran the ball a lot in Miami, and he was effective doing so, averaging over 4 yards per carry last season. So Moss needs to step up, and he's had some struggles at camp over the last few seasons. And to start out on a good note, that's a good thing for Zack Moss. It's a good thing for this team. Brandon Beane alluded to the fact that he was coming off of an injury last year, couldn't cut in a certain direction that affected his play. So far, so good, at least with Zack Moss.
Let's get into Jordan Poyer here. He came on the field. He got himself a nice ovation when he got there. Nobody's was bigger than Josh Allen, although I think Von Miller's was close. Von Miller got a big one. Diggs got a big one, but he was there very early on in the day in practice. So, we talked to Poyer after practice, and Drew Rosenhaus was in attendance. And we talked to him after practice. He's in town. He's obviously coming to likely support his new client. But he's going to have some conversations with Brandon Beane, and we got to ask Brandon Beane about that after practice as well. He's like, I have a great relationship with Drew Rosenhaus. We have conversations about this all the time. It's not like Drew Rosenhaus came to Pittsburgh to, kickstart a conversation about Jordan Poyer. I think this is something that's been going on throughout the summer. And, I don't know if this necessarily means that things are close. Jordan Poyer said, we'll see. He seems to be in a really good place. He said that, he wanted to come to training camp to prove, the noise that he's heard all off season. And again, I think sometimes players might see something like one thing, one place, and then turn it into like a motivational tool. I don't know if there's a ton of people screaming from the rooftops that Jordan Poyer is going to lose a step this season. If anything, I think there's a little bit more pro Poyer players, people out there than anything. But listen, players are exceptional at finding one little, thing to motivate them. And, Poyer's coming in. He says he's in the best shape of his life. He felt like he had the best offseason of his career, and he wants to come to training camp to prove that he hasn't lost a step. He's ready to go. And Brandon Beane was asked point blank today, do you think safeties after the age of 30 typically, start to fall off? And he said, there's been examples where guys have played well into their 30s. So I think it just has to be a situation where they all come together. They can get a deal done that works for both sides. I'm not writing that off. I don't think that necessarily Rosenhaus being here means that anything is imminent, but it wouldn't surprise me at any point during training camp or even before the season if they don't work something out.
And I think Poyer, to his credit, he made the right first decision, and that was not holding out. It was coming here, getting out of the field, showing that he wants to help this team win games, that he wants to be a leader for this team that he's been over the course of his career. In terms of, players finding that motivation, I will say that he's kind of outspoken on social media when they get the safeties get bashed a little bit. Pro Football Focus had something where the Bills were like the number 6 defensive back group in the league, and he made sure to pinpoint that or take note of that. I know there was an ESPN Insider article with executives, and someone said they thought Poyer had maybe one good elite level year left due to his age. But to his credit, he's played great football the last few years. He's looked great on the field. There's no reason for me to believe that he's going to just lose a step just because. And you've mentioned this before too. You look at early on in his career, he didn't have a ton of reps during his time in Cleveland early on. He obviously had the lacerated spleen, or the injury that ended his final season in Cleveland as well. That's when he was finally kind of working his way into he was in a starting role and he was playing more. But it's not like the Bills got this player that had all this these snaps under his belt and things like that. So I think he could be effective for a few more seasons. He's doing everything the right way this offseason. So maybe Brandon Beane, like you said, Matt, maybe he and Drew Rosenhaus come into an agreement that's going to make Poyer happy in the short term, give him that payday that he does deserve coming off of an all-pro season.
Alex Barber on YouTube says, I thought Poyer lost a step that last year. Alex is always in the chat. No shade here, but I don't see that. I think he had the best season of his career last year in all, departments. I mean, when you talk about from a player perspective, what they asked Jordan Poyer to be, not only in this defense, but just in the NFL in general, cover tight ends, cover slot guys occasionally, the speedy guys, get in the box, be physical and tackle, cover deep, be your best, one of your best, coverage options in the secondary. 5 interceptions last year, the sack numbers, the tackle numbers. He was absolutely electric, I thought, last year.
Yeah, I agree with that. And Alex mentioned the tackling wasn't as devastating as it used to be. There were a lot of missed tackles on this team in general, especially if you go to the playoff game against the Chiefs, if that's like the last thing in your memory. But overall, I agree, Matt. That was his best season of his career in 2021.
Where do you want to go next, buddy? Got a few minutes left here on our first post-practice episode of the Shout Buffalo Football Podcast. We will be with you live every day this week except Thursday when the Bills are off.
Well, I mean, first of all, I want to just say the dorm looks pretty spacious, and I wanted to ask for your take on the toilet paper because I heard Von Miller saying, he was a little stunned at 33 to enter a dorm room. The toilet paper wasn't up to his standards, so you're pushing 40 here, Mr. Parrino, and I'm wondering, is the toilet paper up to par for you? I think you're loving the dorm life, obviously missing the fam, but look at that.
I got a fresh roll right here.
Ooh.
It's a Hilliard. It's a Hilliard roll, green select choice. So very environmentally
Green
friendly.
Select.
Yeah. All right. So a couple of things about this. First and foremost, I don't know if this is the same paper that he uses. I'll have to kind of follow up on that. But if it is, I'll give it a quick test here. Not too thick. You don't want it to be too thick, and it is 1 ply, I believe. What kind of ply guy are you? Single ply, 2 ply?
No, I'm a 2 ply.
See,
gotta
I like
pamper
to be
yourself, Matt. Treat yourself.
Yeah. So I don't have a huge problem with this. It's kind of like graded on the one side, very soft on the other, very typical of the toilet paper situation. I got to tell you, I'm not a very picky toilet paper guy.
Okay, that's fair. I was a little worried when you said you were going to test it out on the show. I didn't know where you were going with that.
No. I was just going to actually open it and just feel it. I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole.
All right,
but I will also say, and listen, I don't like to give a free advertisement away, but Dude Wipes, big fan. Big fan. Oh, and Joshua says that you're very bougie with the TP. He's a very bougie fella, Joshua. Right. Indeed. Right. I think you're very bougie. Do we want to like take everybody around the room real quick?
I think so.
Show them? Is that appropriate?
Oh, absolutely, it is.
All right. So first and foremost, check this out. So check out that setup. So like what happens is, can you hear me, Ryan? I'm a little bit.
I can still hear you.
Oh no. So we got the see the desktopper there? See the desktopper?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I kind of took one of them off, put it on the cot, and these are the cots, right? Like they're kind of tough. We get through it. And I just kind of made a little like microphone setup here. We got this going on here. Here's the other one. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get all the way to the bathroom. Here it is. Yeah.
Boom.
Right. There you go. They gave you 3 rolls, so they take care of you here at St. John Fisher.
Absolutely. We have some follow-ups. Do they put the media in a different wing? I would assume so.
That was a lot of work. Yes, they do put you in a different wing. I spilled a little bit of my coffee. That was really just disheartening. Elliot Eisler, freaking Matt MacGyver over here. And if you're listening and saying, what happened to the show? We are off the rails because you're obviously audio only. I just took everybody on a little tour. What was that comment? What was that comment? Bring that up again. Need to rename this the Buffalo Bills poop.
Just a one-time thing. We promise.
Listen, it was in the news, okay? Von Miller brought it up.
True.
He wanted to talk about the the toilet paper, so I thought I'd bring it to you. I don't know if that's actually the same one. They might have actually even a different toilet paper for the Bills players. I don't know. But we're in Dorsey Hall, so it's like right down the left side. Like if you're walking in from training camp, it'll be on your right side right before you get to the fields. But everything's going again, Ryan. They got all the games out in the parking lot. They got the autograph sessions. Pops Mafia asks, are your neighbors rowdy? No, I don't know who my neighbors are. I know that Elena Getzenberg is 2 down. I saw her today coming out of her room, but I've not seen anybody else. So I will check in throughout the week and throughout camp. So Ryan, we could probably talk about this off air, but while we're on the topic,
Sure.
are you staying overnight Friday, Saturday?
Yeah, I'll be
Right.
here. Yeah, I'll be overnight both of those nights. We might even come up Thursday.
Are you
In
staying
the
in the
afternoon
dorm
meeting. No, I
with
don't
me?
I didn't think I had a dorm.
You don't. You'd have to actually stay in my room.
I'm going to say I'm
We've
not a
done it
floor
before.
sleeper there, Parrino. So I
Oh
don't
no,
think that's going to.
there's
Oh,
two
there's
cots,
2
but
cots. Oh,
I will say this. You might be dangling. I think if you're like 6'1" or
yeah.
more, you're dangling off these cots. So Joe Biscaglia, he puts them together and then sleeps diagonally when he stays overnight. He gave me the intel on that. Anyway, we're way off the rails here. But I just want to give you guys a little dorm life. I think that's just important, especially on day one where we're just kind of getting ramped up. But from a Bills perspective, anywhere else you want to go before we get out of here?
No, I think that everything was covered really well. Loved seeing the atmosphere there, though. The fans going wild for, you mentioned it, Alan, getting the royal welcome, so to speak, the cheering. He had to acknowledge it. Not that he wouldn't have, but it was so loud for him. Diggs and Von Miller staying after signing things, signing babies and the jerseys, Allen signing for kids. And listen, to anyone that goes to camp and wants an autograph, I don't fault anyone for that, but I do absolutely love the fact that Josh Allen is always looking for the kids and the kids first. That's his MO. So kudos to him for that. Just something I've noticed over the years, and they pointed it out again today when he was going through. He was making sure every child that was in that area was getting his signature. So kudos to Josh for that.
I don't love the adults asking for autographs. Not a fan.
It's fair.
Not a fan. I mean, if you're a diehard fan and you're older and the autograph, like, I mean, I guess that would. But then again, I don't really have a problem with somebody asking for a picture either. I don't know. I do think we, as a sports community, though, we should prioritize the kids, and maybe that's just me talking about like from the vantage point of a father. But like, if I'm in a crowd of people, if I see a crowd of people and there's some adult kind of pushing somebody the other way, or at a baseball game and somebody's trying to get a foul ball and take it away and not give it to a kid, I don't know. I don't love it.
Yeah, no, I can agree with that. I know that some people, though, they take their man cave pretty seriously. And I don't know if they buy the jerseys or if they go around and get signatures, however that is. And, I don't fault people with that. I've seen some impressive ones over the years. But you're right. Kid first, that is the way it is and the way it should be.
All right. We're going to get out of here. Day one in the books. I'm actually going back to Buffalo. Had a lot of stuff to do. So I couldn't get all my stuff. I had to kind of rush over here this morning. So I'm going to go back to Buffalo. I'll be back overnight starting tomorrow. And we'll be back bright and early. Expect observations a little sooner. They went live today at about 3. Probably be live a little bit sooner tomorrow. We had Brandon Bean today, Vaughn, Josh Allen, and Jordan Poyer after practice. So a lot of media kind of delayed things a little bit. Text value, VALU, to 80692. That's 80692. Join Value Home Center's text program. You receive a $10 off a $40 coupon. Plus, be the first to know about new promotions, deals, and new products. For Ryan Talbot, I am Matt Parrino. Hit that like button, subscribe before you go. We'll be back tomorrow. Enjoy your night. Take care, everybody.